Well, welcome everyone. Do you know what I fancy doing today? Some End of Dragons speculation, some discussion. It's been about a week since we did a video like this. So this is a community show where I'm putting your questions, your ideas, your comments, and bouncing back and forth on what you guys have got to say. The footage in the background is going to be Jade C from the recent stream. Absolutely gorgeous stuff. If you missed my coverage of that, they did a really wonky trailer and then a really brilliant stream shown off, so you should be able to get some of that detail back there. Now, speaking of streams, just before we get started, and I throw the intro at you here, I'm recording this at 11:30 in the morning, the day of a big official stream. So this is going to be the day that showcases the final mount, the Siege Turtle, the actually new big mount that's coming with the X-Pack. We obviously had a PC Gamer scoop. I did a video on that. We've obviously also had the official trailer now uploaded to the main Guild Wars 2 website. There wasn't anything further for me to say there. PC Gamer just got it early. But now this stream, they'll give us a lot more details. This is also going to be the last big stream that they do for a while, so you don't want to miss out. If you're getting to this video early-ish, like I said, it's 11:30 for me right now, you seriously might want to consider just pause the video, check the comments. I'll have a link to my stream channel, and like with all of ArenaNet's other big things, I'm going to host a big show today. I'm going to restream the show itself. So if you're there, I'll hand you over, and we'll make sure that we see the whole thing and we can enjoy it together. I've also managed to rope Boots in for this one as well. He wasn't there on the last one, but I managed to get him again. So yeah, that's happening right now. You might want to pause, check it out. With all that said, let's get into the discussion, which I don't think I've got any Siege Turtle questions at all here. So yeah, let's just run through though. So one of the big previous topics we were discussing is how the gem store has undermined the value of real in-game rewards, incentive to do collections, incentive to get achievement points, all that kind of stuff. And you guys had a lot of feedback about that. I suggested just the very basic idea that maybe what Guild Wars need to do after End of Dragons and beyond is they should release things on the gem store where you can buy them instantly with gems, and that means either a huge amount of gold or real world money, right? So you can buy it then, but after about half a year or so, maybe it goes away from the gem store, and at that point it becomes available as an in-game reward. An in-game reward that is difficult to get, and I know that technically this is already true with gems to gold. Nobody really likes to consider that path though. But like an actual in-game little adventure you can go on, an actual reward from a strike mission or something, now it's earnable in-game. And people who bought it on the gem store, what they're really buying is early access. And what they're buying is easy access. And as long as it's clear from the start that the people who paid on the gem store, eventually it will come into the game itself, there should be no problems there, right? And we get the best of both worlds. We get all these amazing opportunities, say, to do like legendary mounts in the game, and mount skins dropping in other places, and novelties and toys, and all the amazing skins and weapons and things that we currently all don't really like because they're way too flashy, and the only way to get them is to spend gems, which is a bit lame. So anyway, that was an idea. There was an enormous response to that, a generally really positive response as well. Here's one such message. This is from Max Mogaviro, who says, I like the idea of gem store items being earnable in-game after a significant delay. It makes even more sense because gem store items usually become unavailable for long and unpredictable stretches of time to create scarcity. Now, that wasn't something I'd really mentioned, but yeah, that is something that they do. This means that when the skins are available in the store, you can pay real money for instant access, but it also means when the items aren't on the store and you're not sure when the next opportunity to buy them is, you're motivated to play through the content. To boot, you decide that the in-game process is too much of a chore for you, then the next time it rotates back into the gem store, you'll be desperate to pay real money. It's a bit manipulative, but it's a decent compromise. So I hadn't really considered this idea of them bringing things back, and I actually think that kind of like scarpers the whole idea to a certain degree. So I don't know whether Arena would go for this now, because what you've actually reminded me of is the fact that yeah, they create scarcity. They take things out of the gem store so that they can bring them back at little windows and create hype about them again. It's like, oh, this item's back. This item hasn't been here for like a year and a half, so I've got to buy it now. We got to do it now. And that manipulative scarcity, and it's already manipulative, they would basically be giving that up. Because I'm not sure I actually buy your argument here that you can do that process of taking away and bringing back for brief periods and adding it permanently in-game. I think adding it permanently in-game kills their opportunity to bring it back at regular windows later down the line, and unpredictable windows. So, I'm not really sure. The whole problem with us talking about this kind of thing in the community is we don't get the stats. And you have to assume, when it comes to matters of money and a ton of people's jobs and so on, a company is going to be very careful about their revenue streams, and they know what they're doing. So, presumably, what we currently see in the gem store is the best method, and without any real numbers, I mean, it's very hard to engage in these conversations for me because I know that I'm pretty much ignorant of the real details. From a consumer standpoint though, I do wish this stuff was in-game. I really think the gem store undermines a lot of my experiences if it is a cosmetic-based economy at the end of the game where you're supposed to be casting wide to get lots of fun skins. It is just crazy to have a gem store that undermines that whole thing. You know, it's crazy to hear me say, I don't know whether I'm really going to completely support this idea, but it makes more sense for the gem store to be offering like boosters and quality of life and actual pay to win stuff than it does for the gem store to be selling like the ultimate ambition for why people play games, the cosmetics. Like, it almost works better if it's straight up power that you're buying in there. From this angle of the discussion, I appreciate that destroys many other areas of the game, and I'm not really advocating for it. But yeah, so I do want to see they address that. And look, if we're talking about addressing the gem store, the first and foremost thing that they really need to do before anything else is get rid of the gem gates on Living World, because it's just crippling new players' abilities to get in and enjoy this story and become invested in the world of Tyria. It's funny, when I look at the Final Fantasy XIV community, they don't think of their patches as like separate things to be reviewed and rated separately. It's like, oh, the expansion doesn't end until patch 0.3 or whatever, and they're all happy to believe that, and they're all happy to wait like a year and a half for their game story to finish, because to them it's all one big thing. All the patches that come after an expansion are a part of that expansion, and that helps them, I think, to be really fervent and excited about it, just because the community perspective is so different. Guild Wars can't enjoy that kind of luxury when it sells you all the individual little patches. It doesn't feel like a part of the expansion anymore when they do that, right? Not to mention the fact that they go so far as to brand it as a separate thing, Living World and so on. So, you know, there's just all these little things that the gem gates really cause Guild Wars to struggle with, and that would be, honestly, if I had to pick one or the other, in-game earnable mounts and, you know, no more crazy skins on the gem store, or the gem gates, it's a tough call. But right now I'm kind of leaning on I don't know. What would you guys pick out of those two? It's tricky. Unreal X says, for the Q&A, what do you think, or speaking of Living World here, of the Living World Season 7 or Season 8? Or maybe a small expansion being a pullback into Cantha and a hard change or revamp on the core specs. This would be a way to where Guild Wars 2 does not end up with overwhelming balance issues of 38 specs. I think a revisit on the core specs where it changes them for the rest of the life of the game. Well, I don't know what you mean by a pullback into Cantha. What are you saying? You want Living World Season 7, Season 8 to be specifically in that region of the world, not everywhere else? Well, look, I think I've been looking a lot at Heart of Thorns lately, and how much I wish that Season 3 of Heart of Thorns was not this crazy story where they were trying to do Balthazar, and they were trying to do a Crichton Civil War, and they were trying to do a story of Jormag and Primordus waking up. Season 3 was really overstuffed. And what I wish Season 3 had been instead was like the first 3 episodes just on Heart of Thorns topics. Duchess Chrysanthia, Malik, the fallout of the Pale Tree, the ambition of the Exalted going forward. Now that little bit, to be fair, we did get a bit on. And of course the Egg, and we did get a bit on the Egg as well. That's what I really think Season 3 should have been focused on. Rounding out the Sylvari stuff. And I can understand why the studio didn't do it, because a lot of us at the time were a bit sick of Sylvari stuff. It felt like Sylvari were a huge focus in core. Like, did we have a moment where in the main story where we all become intimate friends with an Asuran character who takes us back to the council that give us massive revelations? No, but we did have that for the Sylvari. We did have a vision of Ore and all this stuff basically out of that. Khaled Bolg, you know, is a big Sylvari story, and that was really front and center as far as the core game was concerned. And that's fine. I can understand why ArenaNet liked that, because the Sylvari were a really cool, and continue to be, a really cool part of the world building. But then it kind of went on in Season 1 with Scarlet, and then of course it went on in Season 2 as well, not just because of Scarlet, but because we were now properly moving into Morgemoth, and Heart of Thorns was very Sylvari, so a lot of us were like, okay, can we do other stories? But I do think it was a mistake to listen to the naysayers there. I think that the Sylvari needed to continue being a focus after HOT to really round it out. So, moving forward, End of Dragons. I want them to do something like that. The Living World season following End of Dragons, definitely stay in Cantha, keep focusing on those topics. We don't need to be going on world tours. I actually believe in Living World episodes that don't even add that much to the open world. You don't necessarily need a new map in every release. I remember after Bloodstone Fen, they put a specific comment out to the community and said, we don't know if every Living World episode is going to have a map, but that feels good right now, so we're going for it. Suddenly, there's been 3 seasons in a row with map extensions, you know, counting Icebreed Saga as a full-on season. And it's like, this wasn't necessary. I suppose the Champions release, funnily enough, didn't have a map, but we all know that was, you know, completely going wildcard at that point just to close down the Icebreed Saga so they could get into End of Dragons. So I honestly think if the next episode of The Living World is set in Cantha, and it's being able to re-explore places, like with Path of Fire, it would have been really nice to have had a lot of content around the Bone Palace. It wouldn't necessarily have been in new areas, but it would have really helped bring that place to life. I would have liked a lot more content around Amnoon. We got a bit of content around Amnoon in a few episodes, don't get me wrong, but I would have liked more. And so the idea that they do dedicate a whole episode with like a lengthy, meaty story, and it's entirely rounding out plots, and it just so happens to be in places we've already been, I don't think that's too bad. As long as every now and then there are a few little locations to go to, like some new small places, like what a dungeon would offer, or like a DRM, but in a sort of map extension, rather than a whole new map. I think that's a brilliant format, and yes, if that's what you mean by pull back into Cantha, I totally agree. But maybe only for like half the season. If we're talking like a 2-year season, I don't think we should spend both years doing that. I think we should probably spend a year doing that, and then following that, we can now maybe go a little bit more world toury or somewhere else very, very strange, and that's setting up the next X-Pack. I think that's a format that works really, really well when I look across the aisle, and I think that, to Final Fantasy that is, and I think Guild Wars could have been doing this for all of its Living World, instead of being so all over the place. And in a way, by the way, Season 4 kind of did that. 3 episodes to round out Joko and ostensibly Path of Fire stuff, and then 3 episodes to move into a new story. Except it was telling an entire story, it was telling Kralkatori. It moved too fast. In any case, yeah, maybe just 1 season, not 2. Then you're also asking me... Oh, I'll put your question back on screen. Am I really being this rambly and talkative today? You want me to... If they don't give new specs, they revamp core ones, and it helps with the overwhelming balance issue of 38 specs. Okay, I don't really like this idea. I have to be honest. Look, I appreciate the problem with 38 elite specs. Right, that's a weird number. Do you mean 36? I think we'd be on schedule to have 36, right? Or 45 or whatever beyond, you know. I did just dedicate a whole video to that. And in that video, I did say, hey, look, the core lines are pretty badass. Why not just enhance them? And we sort of doubled down, just like Soul Reaper, and that was beautiful, and these other ideas are beautiful. I really stand by that. But the idea of literally just taking those specs and reworking them, I don't think you can sell that. That's not expansion, is it? That's kind of par for the course of what we get with regular balance patches. So what's the idea? Where they just take intended changes like that and hold them off? And look, it's one thing to offer new horizontal choices for people, which sometimes are going to be weaker than current options, so they fall by the wayside. It's another thing entirely to actively take away the old options because you're reworking it into something new, and the previous thing doesn't even exist. Reworks are dodgy prospects, right? There's a reason why I think ArenaNet has been leery about feature packs and about core tier updates and stuff, because when your updates overlap on top of old systems or outright replace them, you have to get it right or people are going to be mad. I remember when the specialization system itself came in, and they did a huge live stream. This was back when the Disneyland Lion's Arch got implemented to the game. They did a huge live stream where they showed all these changes and all these new traits and all these revamps. And I remember there was such a specific moment where one of the devs on the stream said, they kind of basically looked in the camera and they said, listen, if you're a player and out of these changes, you feel like one of your builds or your beloved playstyles is gone, let us know, because we're not trying to get rid of old stuff. And I remember that, and I also remember coming out of that a lot of builds and playstyles were lost, and to this day, you might not see have come back. Some of them for good intent. I know some of you guys are thinking about Ricochet pistol on Thief, for example. You know, sometimes it was actual design decisions, but it's risky. What if you loved old fire magic, and now they just changed it? And also, you know, you can't do that much with just traits. So what, we're revamping the traits? They can do quite a lot with traits, to be fair. You know, traits that change the effect of weapon skills and stuff, I think are actually really, really brilliant. So maybe they could go really deep with them, but it's not good enough for an expansion, I don't think. I think that's way less exciting. I don't think they can sell that to people. I think they still need to be elite specs, but they can rein back what an elite spec means. That's why I proposed what I proposed with utility skill. Maybe what you guys think they can get rid of instead actually is a new weapon idea or whatever. You know, I don't want to get into that whole discussion again. But there you have it. So I like half of your idea, and I don't like the other half, I must be honest. Next, we have Banjo here, who says, I do recall some comments from the devs about dyeable weapons in the past, saying that this would cause trouble on the trading post. Not saying they can't look into the trade post structure as it is. So yeah, I think we had a message on the previous part where someone said, hey, legendary could be dyeable weapons. And, you know, if you guys are out of the loop on this, in Guild Wars 1, all weapons had dye channels. And you could dye them in lots of fun ways. I especially remember having fun dyeing shields, to tell you guys the truth. But they took that away in Guild Wars 2, and I think this argument has simmered down a bit. It's boiled away for the past couple of years. But people used to be really antsy about that. You know, if there was such a thing as a feature that existed in the first game, and it doesn't in the second, that was a real point of contention. I think that ArenaNet got rid of that for a very sensible reason, and that's that it actually does allow them to just do more skins. Like when you look at some of those really expensive Mystic Forge recipes, they're basically just reskins of some other Asuran recipes, right? What are they called? Are they the Inquesty looking ones or dark something? Anyway, they're like red and red lightning on them instead of like the bluey kind of lightning you'd get on regular Asura stuff. And then when you look at, say, Ascended weapons when they first came in, they're basically all just different recolors, like the Skittle Ascended weapons. They apparently do have model tweaks as well. They're really, really hard to see the difference in the models. So I think that has afforded them opportunities. At this point in the game, though, when we're looking for more new, exciting rewards, stuff that will actually compel people to get in game, yeah, I think dyeable weapons is a great idea. And so now you tell me the trade post won't support it. Yeah, but they can have it like, all right, if you dye this weapon, it becomes account bound. I'm not going to say soul bound, let's say account bound. And voila, there you go. So now it can't be on the trading post anyway, because anything that would be dyeable is going to be account bound. And if we're saying this is a legendary exclusive feature, well, hey, they would have been account bound anyway, right? So we don't have to worry. I think a dev comment saying we can't do this because of the trading post would probably be with the idea of making all weapons dyeable. But if we're talking about making specific weapons dyeable, so that you're specifically interested in going for them, I think they can get a lot of mileage out of that. And it's cleaner as well, you know. I think I mentioned this on the previous part, but in the Icebrood Saga, when you've got all the different recolors of like the Fiery Dragon or the Icy Dragon set, I mean, that could just be a set you can swap between different dyes, right? Next, we've got Rakiri Dosetsu, who says, what I want from the Echo Veld Forest is to be more gothic style. Guild Wars really needs to be a bit darker. Hopefully something Dark Souls-ish, perhaps. So I actually think this comment came in right before the Echo Veld stream, which feels like a million years ago now, since we've had the Jade Sea stream in the middle and we got the Siege Turtle today. But I do agree with you here. I think I was a little bit let down by the Echo Veld Forest. It's weird how the Echo Veld Forest trailer looked awesome and the stream looked less awesome. And the Jade Sea stream trailer looked kind of rough, and in the stream it looked amazing. And I do think it's just it needs to be a bit darker. It needs to be a bit gloomier. What really strikes me about the Guild Wars 1 Echo Veld is how like orangey as well the sky is. When you actually do get a look at the sky, it's like this smeared like dark, like grimy black with like orange flakes on it. It's a really weird kind of vibe you get. And I think it's the darkness with the orange glow of the windows built into the trees that really popped and really felt good. And yet it just felt very misty and foggy and creepy. That's what I think of it. I think it's basically like a creepy haunted forest vibe. It's not in lore haunted or anything like that, but that's kind of the experience you've got. And then, yeah, you look up and you see this creepy kind of stone architecture with these gargoyles staring down at you and so on. That's what I want, and gothic kind of feel to it. And it does feel very Maguma jungly. It does feel more like sort of generic foresty. And I wonder... The reason why I'm actually highlighting this comment here is not to be really doom and gloomy about the Echo Veld Forest, because I think there are a lot of redeemable things about it. But I wonder if it's just a case of a nice post-processing layer over the top that brings the darkness down. Because I'll tell you what, for all of its faults, the Icebrood Saga did do some really gorgeous stuff, particularly around Drizzlewood and particularly around Biora, based on how they ran with post-processing, how they soften, how they darken certain places. Biora marches at night in certain places, including, guess what, remember it, a creepy dark forest. I almost want to have it as the background footage, but we'll keep it as the Jade Sea. Looked brilliant. And I feel like on the stream and on the trailer, the devs just kind of aren't utilizing those techniques. I think they need to desaturate the place, and I think that they need to make it feel more grey, more gloomy, more dark. And if they can play with shadows in some fun ways, with like really big drifting, sweeping shadows, and like the swaying of trees, the canopy littering the floor, I think they can do a lot of stuff. So that hopefully will make all the assets pop a lot more, and it's not too far away from actually being what we want, because it is just a matter of vibe and atmosphere, right? Not necessarily assets. That's my hope anyway. Next, we've got Unreal X, who says, for the Q&A, it needs to be someone's job to retune old items and collections. The Mystic weapons for Heart of Thorns, Ascended item specs, they're so expensive and offer little gain in the end of it all. Just cut off the Mystic coin cart in half, change it to Ectos, you can enchant them in the Auric Basin. Old craft times that are not Ascended, like Volcanus, this should be Ascended, or like half a Legendary, it has 3 stat swaps on it. Wow, I can't tell you enough how much I agree with this. I want them to go back and retune some of this old stuff as well. I don't necessarily think that they should make things cheaper. You have a problem with MMOs, and I do want to be very clear, I'm not in this category, but you have a problem with MMOs where if the devs have something that's difficult to obtain, and then later they make it easy to obtain, all the people who got it originally get really grumpy about it, because it's like, oh, they've made it easy for everyone else, or my hard work's been diminished. They don't buy the argument that, oh, you had it early and you had it for years and you dined out on that prestige for all that time. They don't like that argument. And whether you can convince them or not doesn't really matter. It upsets the consumer, and realistically, you don't want to do that. So I don't know whether they'll mess with the prices. There definitely are certain economies that really need a look, like resonating slivers and so on. Mystic coins, though, I actually kind of think it's fine if there's a lot of recipes that require Mystic coins. I think it's a real value to Guild Wars that there's at least one big item out there, like Ectos, that, you know, feels meaningful to get and feels like you really want to stockpile and feels powerful to sell, and the recipes requiring it all actually have worth. So yeah, I agree, a lot of those old Mystic Forge recipes don't look good. I would rather the outputs be bumped up in some way. And you've got a brilliant idea for this as well. I don't know what you mean by 0.5 of a legendary. You know, the thing that I always think of, you guys might not know this, but there is a ludicrously expensive, and I mean ludicrously expensive, amulet in the game, where you have to combine 3 of these like 50 Mystic coin amulets together all at once in the forge. And what pops out, you can then make Ascended, but it's basically just an Ascended Celestial amulet. And there are so many easy ways to get those. It's not going to feel good as well in a couple of weeks when we actually have the Legendary amulet coming in as well from the Return to achievements. But, you know, stuff like that, I would really like to see updates to. Your idea saying 3 stat swaps, now that's beautiful. See, this is one of my big problems with the Legendary Armory. What it offers to people for infinite stat swapping is incredibly powerful. And I don't like that it's only on legendaries. So why don't we take a bunch of these like mid-tier, mid-core items like that are coming out of the Mystic Forge, and say, well, look, these are kind of like legendaries. And I suppose this is what you mean by 0.5 of a legendary, right? But instead of having every stat in the game, it's just 3. And maybe depending on the item that you get, changes what stats are available, or maybe you get to choose the stats that are available at the time of creation or something. There are a couple of processes in the game a bit like this, like the Bloodstone capacitor stuff, but they all require extra steps and extra currencies, and they're all hidden away in random little areas. What about some of these core fundamental things? And if they embrace this idea, not only does that open up Buildcraft to a lot more of the player base, but also it allows them to pump up not just Mystic Forge recipes, but a bunch of collection recipes, a bunch of crafting recipes. See, one thing I think that actually feels really kind of lame and weak in Guild Wars these days is just general crafting. You know, especially for a lot of those accounts that have started to collect legendaries and have started to, you know, get a baseline of Ascended stuff, and we can swap the stats of the Ascended stuff in the Forge all the time. It really doesn't feel great crafting. I mean, what, just do some of the daily time-gated stuff to stockpile it in case you need them, or because you want to make a quick buck on the trading post? It's not that good, but if you suddenly start littering all of these things in, I think that becomes very, very, very meaningful. Not for the hardcore veterans, not for people with accounts like mine, where we already flush with a ton of them, but for everyone else. And for that, I love the idea. I think it's really cool. And, you know, when we're talking about dyeable weapons as well, they could throw that as a feature onto these kinds of skins too, and that's extra incentive as well, that even hits the big veterans at the end. Next, we got Hion BG, who said, whoa, are we 30 minutes in? I've only done a couple of questions. How many more have I got here? Okay, I've got 2 more. All right, we're okay. How have I spoken so much? It's 12 o'clock. Jesus. Heon BG says, hey WP, what about the effects of the other dragons on Cantha? Maybe Echovald are wilds now because of Morgemoth's influence. Maybe the Kurzik survived all these years only to get whispered by Morgemoth's rise a few years back. It's also possible Amber was a thing until Morgemoth awoke as well. Well, Amber kind of is a thing. I think one of the elite specs, like, is it the Blade Sworn mentions actually having Amberite in its bullets? So I think Amber is still around, and we see that ambery kind of creature. For those out of the loop, you know, it's not just Dragon Jade. There was the Jade in the first game, but there was Amber as well in the forest. So why don't we have Dragon Amber? I mean, I've been wondering that question a lot. Maybe it's just because it's not in such an abundance, or maybe somebody grabbed it all and hoarded it all already. Maybe it's because they don't know how to mine it. Maybe because it's too challenging. There is that big difference there, really. There's a lot more Dragon Jade around, but not much Dragon Amber. And I wonder if the End of Dragon story will go into that in some way. But this idea that Morgemoth was there. Now, this is weird, right? Because the idea that there are other pale trees around, that the Malik story confirms to us. You know, if you say that kind of we saw the wreck of Malik's tree out in Heart of Thorns, and that's it, it's over, then that is it. I haven't reviewed what Traherne says at the end of Heart of Thorns. But obviously when we kill him, he says, look, Morgemoth still survives. You have to take me out. This is... And I get the feeling that Traherne says something like, I'm the last seed. This is the last part of his consciousness. You kill him and you can destroy the hive mind, but it means you have to kill me. Now, if that's the case, that doesn't really leave much room for more Mordrum stuff to be going on in Cantha, because surely they would be connected through the Mordrum dream, through the telepathy or whatever you'd want to call it, right? Surely Traherne would know that, and he'd be like, well, you know, this will get rid of it in Tyria, but Cantha's still flush. So that kind of puts a spanner in it. I also do believe, though, that it's such a powerful and brilliant story that there's a pale tree down there, that the devs can easily write in, retroactively, some explanation for as to why that tree is disconnected, right? Maybe in years and years past, the wardens, the Sylvari that were there, the pale tree equivalent that's over there, Ergos if you believe it to be or whatever, maybe they found a way to disconnect themselves from the rest of the Mordrum hive mind, and there's a little detail about that, so now we can have our cake and eat it too. And I think that's a really cool idea. The idea that there are actively bad Mordrum wandering around there, I don't see it. I don't see it because it doesn't quite gel with previous lore, and I don't see it because narratively it really kills the emotion and the importance of what happened with Traherne at the end of Heart of Thorns. I mean, it would add another layer of tragedy to it, don't get me wrong, which would be quite fascinating and macabre to look back at. You know, we killed Traherne for this and they're still around. But I still don't buy it really works, because structurally, you know, we're at the end of Dragon's story now, and this is already threatening to be, as I described Season 3 earlier, overstuffed. There's already so many things going on. The idea that there's more Mordrum around, the fear that we'd just be going in circles narratively, I don't think any of that works. So unfortunately, I'm not sure I'm a buyer of it. Next, we have Boris, is a great name, who says, is talking about the elite specs from End of Dragons. He says, I don't like the flip over skills on Vindicator. They should just make 2 legends, but you have to equip both if you want one of them. But you have to equip both if you want one of them. That's quite strange. I don't know what you mean there. Look, I'm a big fan of this idea in general. I remember doing a video of Boots where this immediately came to my mind. I think this would be brilliant. He was not excited about it at all. And I feel kind of like that's put a downer on it for me now. But I really like the idea that when you elite specialize as Vindicator, you just get 2 legends to choose from. They're different legends, with different playstyles, with different gameplay gimmicks. There is no flip over thing. Figure something else out for like the F3, the F2 or whatever. But just generally have that idea where I can choose between 2 totally different legends and just go big on them. I think that works fine. My problem with the Vindicator is Beta 2 was the beta that I really didn't get as many hours in as I wanted. So I don't know whether you can like learn to play through the clunk. But yeah, it felt a bit weird to me, the flip overs. And weird can be good. Weird can be, oh, this is a new thing and I just need to learn what there is to enjoy about it, and then eventually you find out it's really something you like. Or weird can just be, no, this doesn't feel good and it never will. So I just feel like I didn't get that time with it. I do think there's something to be said, though, for the fact that when you get an elite specialization, it should feel like immediately you get a good sense of how the gameplay feels, and it should be immediately paying off in a fun way. If that time for it to pay off is really far too long, people aren't going to be having fun as they run through End of Dragons and they slowly unlock the damn things. So I don't know, but I like the idea of double legends. I think that's just cool. Think about the build craft. You know, you can choose to have St. Victor and Ventari, or you can choose to have Archimedes and Shiro, or you can complement with Jarlis, blah, blah, blah. Loads of options available. More than you ever would have experienced at any one moment for Rev, because usually you only unlock one new legend. But then you've also got the idea of having them both at once, which could be a fun interplay too. And maybe then you can, if you do the both at once thing, you can still retain some of that flavor that was there before of the flipovers, just kind of in a different mechanism. And from a developmental standpoint, surely it helps the devs to just be able to put these two separate legends in two completely separate buckets and just make them feel good on their own individual basis and merits, right? Or maybe I'm crazy. We'll see on Beta 4 what exactly they've done, not just with the Vindicator, but with all of those. And Beta 4 is quickly going to be taking the spotlight shortly after this turtle stuff is done. So I'm going to head over to Twitch now. I'm going to produce this video. I will be there. Feel free to check out in the description again. We'll enjoy this turtle stuff. And tomorrow, I'll try to do a bit of a recap for you guys here on YouTube as well that might miss it while it's live. But do try to come in, have some fun. I'll be doing Return to achievements, working towards my legendary amulet, which, as I say, is available in like a week. And I'm really behind on the progress, which should mean a lot of story. I don't know, maybe we'll do some Icebrood Saga. Maybe we'll go earlier and pick some other highlights, because I have a lot to do. At least I've got clean inventories now. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one very soon. Take care. Yeah, nothing to plug here, really. I'll let YouTube auto-generate the links in the background. Maybe they're interesting, or scroll down, hit up the Twitch link.